Speed, power, and electrifying energy. It's what all of these cars have in common. They're the soul of the muscle car culture. Nothing beats history, and today we're going to be counting down 10 of these bad boys that define the golden age. First, the L88 Corvette. Let's wind the clock back to 1967 when Chevy decided to drop something into the Corvette that was less of an engine and more of a declaration of war on speed limits. I'm talking about the L88 427. On paper, Chevy played it cool, claiming that the L88 had 430 horsepower, but we all know that that figure was just a cover. In reality, this engine was cranking out closer to 560 horsepower, a figure that would make most sports cars today think twice. But raw power wasn't just what set the engine apart. See, Chevy didn't exactly want your average Joe taking this monster on a Sunday drive. This was a purpose-built race engine shoved into a street-legal car. No radio, no air conditioning, and a high-compression engine that needed 103 octane fuel just to purr. And believe me, that's not something you're going to find at your local gas station. They even made sure to equip it with the M22 Rock Crusher transmission, which was more about handling all that torque than keeping things comfortable. Chevy wanted this car to be in the hands of people who could actually handle it, folks who weren't afraid to push it to the edge. And because of that, it's not just the engine that's iconic, it's the attitude, the exclusivity, and the sheer audacity of making something so singularly focused on speed. And that, my friends, is what makes the L88 Corvette an absolute legend. Number 2, the Pontiac 38. Now, this wasn't just an engine, this was a revolution. Back in 1964, Pontiac decided to stuff this powerhouse into the GTO. And it wasn't just about going fast, it was about making a statement. The 389 had up to 368 horsepower under the hood. What made the 389 so great wasn't just the raw numbers, though, it was the versatility. You could get it in a bunch of different setups, from a base 4-barrel carb to the fire-breathing tri-power version with 3 2-barrel carbs. It was the engine that made speed and power accessible, and it changed the game for what American cars could do. The 389 democratized muscle. It put that thrill within reach of anyone with a bit of ambition and a lot of lead foot. Number 3, the Oldsmobile 455 Rocket. Now, let's kick it back to the golden age of muscle cars with an engine that made the name Oldsmobile ring like a battle cry. We're talking about the Oldsmobile 455 Rocket. It was launched in 1968, and it came packing some serious heat. We're talking up to 400 horsepower and a ton of torque. It gave way to beasts like the 970 Olds 442 W30, where it took the idea of speed and made it personal. This wasn't your run-of-the-mill grocery getter. It was a fire-breathing V8 powerhouse. Oldsmobile knew how to party, adding features like a high-lift cam and functional air scoops that helped ram cool air into the carburetor at high speeds, giving it a real shot of adrenaline when it needed it most. Back in the late 60s and early 70s, GM's divisions were practically at war with each other. Chevy, Pontiac, Buick, Oldsmobile, all were fighting to build the best engines. It might have been corporate chaos, but it was pure magic for us gearheads. Number 4, the Dodge 440 6-pack. Dodge looked around at all those muscle cars vying for the top spot and thought, hey, why not just go bigger and badder? That's how we got the 440 6-pack, a massive 7.2-liter engine with not 1, not 2, but 3 2-barrel carburetors. It's like they decided that if 2 carbs were good, then 3 would be downright legendary. And they weren't wrong. With 390 horsepower and 490 pounds of torque, the 440 6-pack wasn't just about making a statement, it was about laying down the kind of power that made other engines in its class look like toys. This beast powered cars like the Super Bee and Roadrunner, turning them into asphalt-eating monsters. But here's what made it truly special: the way it delivered that power. You could cruise around on just one carburetor, all chill and easy, but put your foot down and bam, all 3 carbs would roar to life. It gave you the best of both worlds, a street-friendly ride when you needed it, and a track-ready beast when you wanted to unleash everything under the hood. All that torque was enough to rival even the 426 Hemi, but the 6-pack delivered that torque at a lower RPM, about 3,200 to be exact. Number 5, the Buick 455 Stage 1. Back in 1970, Buick wasn't just about putting you to sleep while you waited for your fillings. They were cranking out engines that could wake up the entire neighborhood, and the 455 Stage 1 was the crown jewel of that lineup. A 7.5-liter gallon pushing 360 horses and a whopping 510 pounds per foot of torque. I mean, this thing pulled like a freight train, and it didn't need much coaxing to do it. Just a light tap on the gas, and boom, you were off. The real beauty of the 455 Stage 1, well, it had that perfect mix of power and smoothness. That balance is what made it really special. Comfort and terror living hand in hand. Buick only rolled out 3,776 of these bad boys, making them a rare gem among muscle cars. They came with some nice upgrades too. You had chrome rocker covers, a beefed up cooling system, and that unmistakable Stage 1 badge. The dual exhaust system was low restriction, meaning it let the beast breathe just right. Number 6, the Pontiac SD 455. This wasn't just a regular engine given a bit of spit and polish. Oh no. This was Pontiac's middle finger to the changing automotive landscape in 1973, an era when regulations and fuel concerns were squeezing the life out of high-performance vehicles. But this engine, well, this beast said, nah, we're not done yet. When Pontiac dropped the SD 455 into the Firebird Trans Am, it wasn't just about raw power, although it had plenty of that, pushing out a ridiculous 370 horsepower and 500 pounds per foot of torque. Now, this engine was a statement, a race-bred V6 that snuck into a street car, refusing to go quietly into the night. Car and Driver even called it the fastest Pontiac ever. You see, Pontiac didn't just toss the Super Duty badge on any old hunk of metal. This was the real deal, a finely tuned machine that was more muscle than a pro wrestler at a weigh-in. Number 7, Cobra Jet. Now, this beauty made its debut in 1969 inside the Ford Mustang Mach 1. The Cobra Jet was Ford's answer to the muscle car madness started by Chevy and Pontiac. It was their way of saying, hey, we can do muscle too. The specs? Oh, they were juicy. We're talking about 428 cubic inches of raw power. Ford claimed 335 horsepower, but if you ask anyone who's driven one, it felt like a lot more. Like calling a hurricane a strong breeze. With 460 pounds per foot of torque, this thing could rip stumps out of the ground or make your heart skip a beat. Ford wasn't just trying to make an everyday driver here, they wanted a beast for NHRA Superstock drag racing. And the result was an engine that could rocket a Mustang down the quarter mile in the mid-13s straight out of the dealership. They took their 428 Police Interceptor and supercharged it, beefing it up with some of the best performance goodies of the day. Number 8. The Ford 427 Cammer. Ford put together an engine with a race-tuned output of 616 horsepower. Yeah, that's right. Over 600 horses under the hood, roaring to go. It wasn't just built to compete, it was built to dominate. The engine was so potent that NASCAR had to ban it before it even got a chance to hit the track. That's like a fighter so good they won't even let him in the ring because they already know the outcome. But the story doesn't end there. A few of these beasts found their way into drag racing, where they became instant legends. When you think about the heart of a dragster, it's the 427 Cammer that comes to mind, bringing in raw power and grit to the strip. Number 9, the Chrysler 426 Hemi, or as gearheads like to call it, the Elephant. 425 horsepower and 490 pounds per foot of torque, all packed under the hood of a Plymouth Hemi Cuda, or a Dodge Charger RT. Originally cooked up for NASCAR, the 426 Hemi was so dominant it got banned after just 1 year. That's right, it was too much for the competition. But Chrysler wasn't about to let all that engineering go to waste, so they made it a street engine, and that's when it truly became the stuff of legends. Imagine rolling up to a stoplight with that kind of power rumbling under the hood. It's engines like this that make you remember why you fell in love with cars in the first place. Raw power, a little bit of rule breaking, and a whole lot of fun. Number 10, the Chevrolet 454 LS6. Now, this thing came roaring back into the scene in 1970, stuffed under the hood of the Chevelle SS, and it wasn't just any engine, it was the engine. With 450 horsepower and 500 pounds per foot of torque, it was like Chevrolet took the mic, dropped it, and said, hey, good luck topping this, boys. This 7.4-liter V8 was a statement. The LS6 didn't just make power, it lived and it breathed it. You had forged internals tough enough to handle anything you threw at it, like an 11.25-to-1 compression ratio that squeezed every bit of juice out of that fuel. It had a high-lift camshaft, which is a fancy way of saying that it could churn out torque from low to high like nobody's business. Back in the day, it was the engine that defined the muscle car era, a time when emission standards were more like suggestions and gas prices, well, let's say that they weren't keeping anyone up at night. This particular Chevelle might just be the last LS6